And we are joined now by the CEO of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C., our good friend, Mark Dubowitz. Mark, what a day, first of all. Secondly, you've done such great work on Iran's nuclear program, exposing the threat it poses, to the point, by the way, that you've been sanctioned by the Iranian regime. I know that's a badge of honor for sure, but big question mark, as Israel prepares a response, is there a possibility that Israel perhaps targets those Iranian nuclear facilities? Is everything on the table?
Yeah, Eric, thanks for having me, and great to see you. Everything is on the table. The Iranians should be preparing themselves for a Israeli strike. The Israelis can go after, there's a whole target bank there, Eric. They can go after the nuclear facilities, they can go after pipelines, refineries, they can go after a massive cyber attack, Iran's central bank. They can go after regime assets, leadership. They can do to the Islamic Republic what they've just done to Hezbollah in Lebanon, a decapitation of the top leadership and hitting at the military and security infrastructure of their most dangerous enemies.
Yeah, it's stunning to me, Mark. As you just mentioned, Israel has just devastated Hezbollah, obviously has smashed Hamas as well over the past year. Why would Iran do this today? I know they want to save face, but man, does not seem like a very wise move considering what Israel has managed to accomplish over the past few weeks against Iran's proxies. What's Iran's thinking here?
Well, I think the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei may be looking at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and thinking that once again they're going to restrain the Israelis and hopefully, from his perspective, engage the Islamic Republic. If you remember, on April 13th, the Supreme Leader fired 321 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones at the Jewish state. And Biden, in helping defend Israel, and the American military deserves huge credit for working with the Israelis and others to shoot down those missiles and drones, he said, take the win. And so take the win meant that the Israeli response was very limited at the time, and I think Khamenei is counting on that again.
And I wonder if that's going to be the posture again, Mark. Look, one man, sadly, a Palestinian man in Jericho, was killed by a shrapnel from one of these Iranian missiles. But I wonder if the Biden administration's message once again will be, look, we need to restrain Israel. It seems that the Biden administration only wants to approach this from a defensive position. They don't like, it seems, when Israel goes on the offense and preempts these threats.
Well, unfortunately, that's been the policy of the Biden administration from day one. It's engaged the Islamic Republic. It's to call for de-escalation. It's to rely on diplomacy without coercion. And it's to rely on the Israelis to stand down and not on American power to be credibly threatened. And as a result, where are we, Eric? We're in a major regional war, which is exactly what the Biden-Harris administration tried to avoid by showing weakness, by calling for de-escalation, and by not willing to credibly demonstrate power to the Supreme Leader. We are facing the war that they sought to avoid.
Yeah, and I sense your frustration, Mark, and it is well-founded. Look, you're in D.C., you're CEO of one of the top think tanks in the world when it comes to these issues in FDD. You're in these high-level meetings in D.C., so you've heard the ideological viewpoint of the Biden administration for the past nearly 4 years, which brings me to the question, given the events of the past few weeks, could we call Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, the de facto leader of the free world right now?
Well, I think Netanyahu, and particularly I think the Israeli military, the Israeli intelligence services, because they're doing, yeoman's work, the heavy lifting, they're risking their lives. Defending Western civilization. I mean, Israel is on the front lines against radical Islamist terrorism. And one has to always remember, Ali Khamenei calls Israel the little Satan, but he calls the United States of America the great Satan. And they've got the blood of thousands of Americans on their hands. In fact, it's worth noting, Eric, I think as you have on your show, that when Israel took out Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, and Fouad Shukra and Akil, he took out 3 Hezbollah terrorists who had plotted the 1983 Marine barracks bombing and the embassy bombings that killed over 300 Americans. And so we should be thanking the Israelis for not only defending Western civilization, but for killing terrorists with American blood on their hands.
Mark, such a great point that I think people forget. Could you expand on that a bit more about how Iran, let's talk about their nuclear program, for instance, which you are a foremost expert on. about how Iran is not just a threat to Israel or to the immediate region. This is a direct threat to the United States. I'm thinking first and foremost of that intercontinental ballistic missile program.
Eric, I'm so glad you mentioned that. So few people discuss that. I mean, the Iranians are not only building a nuclear weapons program, but exactly right. They're building ICBMs, and ICBMs have only one warhead to deliver, and that's a nuclear warhead. And ICBMs are not for Israel. They're not for our Gulf allies. They're not for the Europeans. They only have one address, and that's the United States of America. Ali Khamenei wants to build an arsenal of nuclear-tipped ICBMs targeting the United States of America. And people say, well, he'll never use it because it would be a death wish. Well, we never know with these Islamists whether they actually are suicidal. And the second thing I would point out is even if they don't use it, they can threaten nuclear blackmail and hold us hostage for decades to come. So once again, the United States should do what multiple presidents have promised, which is to not let Iran develop nuclear weapons. But I fear, Eric, that the Biden-Harris administration won't do that. And ultimately, the Israelis are going to have to take on this responsibility once again.
Yeah, it will be left to Israel once again to do the dirty work for the rest of the world, Mark. And a nuclear Iran would provide those proxies like Hezbollah, like the Houthis in Yemen, with effectively a nuclear umbrella. Yet, Mark, it seems over the past few weeks that ring of fire strategy of the Iranian regime seems to be unraveling a bit. Do you see Iran, given that, could Iran possibly move closer to other regimes? Say Turkey, which is led by an anti-Israel demagogue in Recep Tayyip Erdogan, perhaps Russia. Do you see Iran now that it's on the ropes a bit, that proxy strategy, maybe looking to strengthen its relationships with some more powerful players on the world stage?
Yeah, Eric, I think the Iranians have already done that. The Islamic Republic has strong relationships with Putin's Russia, with Xi's China. And as you mentioned, Erdogan in Turkey is not only anti-Israel, he's anti-American, and he's an Islamist, and he's one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. So they will be looking to Islamists. They'll be looking to other dictators to forge and strengthen what, is this axis of aggressors or this axis of tyrannies that is developing and strengthening and is really a threat again to America.
Yeah, Turkey, the second largest military in NATO, Mark. Well, what a dangerous player right now. Could, if this goes the right way, for the free world, I should say, could we see, we're talking about the bad guys, of course, Iran cleaving closer to Turkey, to the Putin regime, but if Iran is weakened to just a major, major degree, perhaps other Sunni Arab nations like Saudi Arabia come in the fold in the Abraham Accords and forge peace treaties with Israel. As chaotic as it seems right now, Mark, could we actually be on the dawn of a more positive, more democratic, more free Middle East if the Iranian axis is weakened further?
I think so. And I think with the Israelis doing God's work for Western civilization, for the United States of America, and taking on the Islamic Republic in this axis, I think there's an opportunity to roll it back. I would also mention that our greatest allies in the fight against the Islamic Republic are the Iranian people. The majority of Iranians have been on the streets since 2009, yelling death to the dictator, asking for American help. President Obama didn't help them. President Biden didn't help them. President Trump did provide some help. And he certainly put maximum pressure on the regime, and he provided some support for the people. But if we provide maximum support for the Iranian people, if we do what Ronald Reagan did behind the Iron Curtain during the Soviet Union, where he supported anti-Soviet dissidents, right? This is a way to undermine, to weaken, to restrain. And if history smiles on us the way it smiled at Ronald Reagan, an opportunity to bring down the Islamic Republic of Iran and replace it with a free, pragmatic, moderate, pro-American, pro-Israel government would have far-reaching consequences for the Middle East. So Abraham Accords, yes, but I would also call it the Cyrus Accords, a deal between the United States, Israel, and a free Iran.
Love it. And from your lips to God's ears, by the way, Mark, hey, about 30 seconds left. Real quick, what would a free and democratic Iran mean, not only for the region, but for the world? Massive, massive world changer, right?
Great opportunities. I mean, opportunities for the Iranian people, massive investment, freedom, prosperity for the region, really extending, Persian culture and Persian opportunities. And really, I believe that we are natural allies. We, the Americans, the Israelis, we are natural allies with the Persians. And when you get rid of this brutal, evil regime, I think the opportunities for peace are immense. And I think that's really that's really bringing God to the world. When you bring peace to the Middle East, to the holiest places, Judaism and Christianity.
Amen, Mark. Well said, folks. Follow Mark across social media on X and at fdd.org. Mark, great stuff as always. God bless. We'll see you again soon.